and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. With us right now from our New York City studio is Brandon Webb. He's a former Navy SEAL and best-selling co-author of Benghazi, The Definitive Report. He's also the editor-in-chief of SOFREP.com. Brandon, as always, it is great to talk with you. How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me again.
All right, so it's been a few days now since your site, SOFREP, decided to publish the Journal of Ambassador Chris Stevens. He died along with your best friend Glenn Doherty and two others during the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya on September 11th of last year. You thought that some people would be shocked by SOFREP doing this, but what has the reaction been in these last couple of days?
Well, I think the overall reaction has been very positive. I think anytime you publish something where there's a perception that this is a very personal document, people are understandably going to be a little bit shocked. But I think once people read his final thoughts, they see that this was more of a professional journal. And for us it was important because there's a lot of speculation about what Ambassador Stevens was thinking during his final days. And when you see it in his own handwriting and that he truly did care about the political situation in Libya, but also had a deep concern over the security situation, and it's in his own words, I think that's an important piece when we're talking about accountability at the State Department.
Yeah, you mentioned that and we'll show up an image of it here. It is in his own handwriting, which I do think adds an element of realism to all this. What was the most shocking thing or most surprising thing that you saw when you actually read the journal?
I think the most chilling thing that I saw was his last entry on September 11th, which was had to have been only a few hours since or before the attack and before he ended up losing his life, and it said never-ending security threats. So again, I just, this whole Libya and Benghazi situation, it's true we operate, the State Department operates, the U.S. operates in very dangerous places in the world, but my thing, this wasn't a case where you had people going forward and they had the adequate security that they warranted. It was to me and the others that have been digging into Benghazi, it was just gross negligence on the part of the State Department with the clear lack of security. I mean, they were taking security measures away from these guys when Tripoli and Benghazi were rated as the top 10 most dangerous facilities on the State Department's own vulnerability assessment, which is called the SETL. It's a security environment threat list.
Gross negligence, that this is all still being investigated. We'll see what the official ruling is, but your opinion, of course, is very important since you've done so much digging into this. But I also want you to take us back a bit and tell us how SOFREP actually got your hands on this diary and why you did make that final decision to go ahead and publish it.
Well, we've been working, Jack Murphy, myself, and a few others have been working on Benghazi and really trying to dig into the truth of the matter. What really motivated us initially was just this smoke and mirrors that was coming out of Washington, and nobody was really getting the story straight. And because we run SOFREP.com, and because most of our writers on there are former military special operations folks and former intelligence folks, we're very tapped in. And so we have people at the CIA, at the State Department. These people care about the truth, and they want, they don't want to expose any sensitive information, but they want the truth to be told and people to be held accountable. So how we got the diary, to answer your question, is one of our, through our State Department sources, that essentially said, look, they think that this is important, and we agreed, and we agreed to publish it, and I think it's an important piece of information that hopefully we will get to the bottom of this, and in our opinion, Patrick Kennedy has a lot of accountability, and the buck stops with him. So I just hope we see some consequences within the State Department.
And to that point, specifically, what impact do you hope the release of this has on the investigation and the response still ahead to the
No one, people have been shuffled around in the State Department, but no one, to our knowledge, has been relieved of duty. They're still collecting a paycheck. And I come from a military background, and if you look at it from a a Navy perspective, if a captain of the ship runs it aground, he's held responsible and relieved of command, and all roads lead back to the Undersecretary of Management, Patrick Kennedy, at the State Department. In this situation, he clearly ignored repeated subordinate requests for security, his own State Department vulnerability assessment, which I mentioned earlier, called the SETL, which is the Security Environment Threat List. It rates 200 out of the 264 facilities. They use this to rate threat level annually, and in 2012, the SETL put Tripoli and Benghazi in the top 10 out of only 14 facilities of 264 that were rated higher critical threat. Benghazi and Tripoli were in the top 10. So that document and report is supposed to warrant security and funding, and they were getting the security taken away from them. And a lot of people don't realize Tripoli was evacuated as well. So Benghazi's calling down to the embassy in Tripoli, and they're not getting any help because they're too busy evacuating the embassy in Tripoli because they just didn't have adequate security.
And the journal, illustrates that point, that this simply should not have happened. Also, Brandon, while we have you here, I wanted to get your take, and we've been talking about this. You guys have your sources, other members of the media have other sources, but this issue of leaks from high-ranking officials in the White House and the Defense Department is a big issue right now. And I wanted to get your take on the news out of the Pentagon now that retired U.S. Marine General James Cartwright is now the target of a criminal leak investigation involving that covert cyber attack on Iran's nuclear facilities back in 2010. This is a man who is the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the second highest ranking military officer in the United States. What does it say to you as a veteran, someone who understands the importance of certain information staying secret, that Cartwright potentially could be the source of a leak of this magnitude?
I think it's a serious situation. I personally don't know. I haven't paid attention too much and really dove into that situation to really formulate an opinion. But I think as a broader situation in Washington, we have clearly our government has gone a direction where there's not enough citizen oversight, and people are very concerned. And I think that potentially is the source of why, not in the general's case, but in other cases where you have good people that want to come forward and say, look, this is happening. There's not much oversight, and there should be, these days it's an alphabet soup. Pick your agency, whether it's the IRS, the State Department, or any of the others, the NSA. Clearly, we need some more oversight. And you read any book on psychology, and it's in human nature to, if there is no oversight, there will be corners cut, and people have a potential to drive personal agendas and abuse that power.
Yeah, well, these leaks continue to be an issue, a hot topic for debate. But Brandon, thanks very much for your time. Editor-in-chief of SOFREP.com. It's a pleasure, as always, to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks, John.
All right.